Thank you, Mr. Manghat, for joining us here, and welcome to GBS 2017.
It's a pleasure.
So can you take us through the growth story of UAE Exchange in particular and some key milestones that you can really point out?
If you look at it, there are three or four things which really made the growth story very possible for us in India market specifically, has been the introduction of non-banks getting into very actively space, and with the advent of technology which is coming into that last decade. So as a group, we have been very aspirational in terms of to do that, growing the business both organically as well as inorganically. And when we had a lot of opportunity to grow the market business across the market globally as well. So as we stand today, we are covering 45 markets directly, with handling almost 100 million transactions annually with a throughput volume of $100 billion. So we have really built the institutions really globally, both organic and inorganic way.
But how has UAE Exchange, managed to keep both Indian as well as, the cultures of UAE together into the company, weaved it like together into the company ethos and made the brand such a success?
See, when you are a global business, you cannot take a shelter and a shadow of one culture or one nation by itself. But being the nature of the business that we are in, India is a very big market for us. For example, in the case of money transfer, we handle globally $30 billion, of which $8 billion comes into India. So India is a very big market, and definitely Dr. Shetty, being an Indian, he's proud Indian. So definitely he has got a lot of sentiments and attachment towards India as well.
Right. As you rightly said, annual remittances from UAE, form a significant part for the Indian economy. So what are the facilities that you provide to your consumers in order to make sure that that number keeps growing year on year?
I think, if you look at it, I'm sure with the buzzword which we hear more about, the fintech, if you go back and see, remittances and payments industry at large has been always a first mover in terms of adopting technology. Right. So technology has really helped us to really move to that. So one single thing which we have always captured is to take out the anxiety of the customer. That is the single promise we have always been driving. If I want to bring some analogy, like not so long back, up till 2004, 2005, it takes 7 to 10 working days for a remitter to get a beneficiary account credited. But now we are in a world, we are able to credit the bank accounts, and with the new regulation coming into a prepaid instrument, even on a real-time online basis, 24/7, whether it is a working day or not. So technology has really helped that, and the regulatory push on technology on the Indian banking sector, and Indian banking sector as a service industry as a whole embracing technology has made a big difference into do that, because we work with across the globe in multiple countries, but the way a payment system, the way a clearing system has evolved so rapidly, I don't think there is no other path. I think it has really helped us in getting the promise. So that anxiety reduction has been our promise.
Going forward, how do you see the India-UAE ties strengthening? And because both the nations are investing in the countries, whether it's the form of exports, whether it's to boost business, and what role do you see UAE Exchange playing in that strengthening of the tie?
So as an institution for the last 37 years existent in UAE, and quite very much close to the Indian diaspora out there, and also not able to connect across the globe on to do that, we have taken a very forefronting opportunity. For example, one of the reasons we are in the summit is also part of that, because it's very important that you connect and engage and seek what kind of opportunities for to do that. We are doing multiple things into the Indian market specifically, which we can lead, because end of the day we are a UAE institution. That's what we boast about that, and we see that a lot of opportunities that we do that. And secondly is that it's more about the tacit thing that you try to bring in. It's not about all about that. You get to see opportunities, you bring people together. Dr. Shetty has been a person who is in the forefront in leading that dialogue quite a lot in that stream as well.
So Mr. Manghat, if I had to ask you your thoughts on being at the Global Business Summit this year, and what do you think, how does these platforms help global players to come down here and actually know the real scenario and talk to Indian companies here and figure out a way forward?
we're quite excited to be here, and we have taken a long-term view of associating with the Global Business Summit, because we see is that it's definitely it's a idea to engage, idea a platform to exchange and debate quite a lot. I'm sure definitely we will get to see a lot of opportunities, quite a lot of learnings we can do that, and we are quite happy that we are part of a summit which brings the community as a whole across the globe, and we are very happy that it's no more India per se, it's more about India global per se.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr.
Thank you so
Manghat.
much.
Pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ankit, for joining us, and welcome to the Global Business Summit. The Prime Minister is all out to make India a digital economy, and you've been on ground and you're working closely with that. If you could compare the scenario, how have you seen things changing over the last, let's say, 5 years or so? And if we talk about the hinterlands, where are we whereas digitization is concerned on that front?
See, in the last 5 years, we've experienced a significant shift in the way people have been doing their businesses, they've been doing their compliance, they've been making their payments. So a majority of it has moved from a traditional model of a brick and mortar to an online platform. So any of the e-governance services that are required, or they essentially your return filing, your PAN card application and other processes, or probably even updating your Aadhaar, a lot of people are very keen about keeping all of their ID proofs, address proofs and all of these updated on regular basis, so they can do it through the technology sitting at their place, they can do it online. Alternatively, there have been a lot of people who have walked into our centers spread across the country for availing these services there. So the payment patterns have shifted. Earlier, whatever service fees realization used to happen was majorly on cash basis. So now a lot of people have started moving towards the digital economy. They're moving towards cards, Aadhaar enabled payment systems and your wallets.
But I think is it still a long way that we capture our tier 3 and our small towns into this purview of digitalization?
It's just the tip of the iceberg. So once we tend to roll it down to tier 3, tier 4, tier 5 cities, that is where we can proudly say that we are a purely digital economy in vis-a-vis to the comparison to the other countries.
Thank you so much, Ankit, for joining us, and have a good time.
Thank you.
I'd like to invite Mr. Sudhesh Giriyan, Chief Operating Officer, Express Money Services. Please put your hands together as he steps forward. Thank you.
India remains at the top of the chart as far as remittances are concerned. India last year received $69 billion, 3.3% of the Indian GDP is made up of remittances. It's all a matter of pride that India is at number one, and India has remained number one over a period of time. But what is interesting is that after that phenomenal growth that we saw for a few years from 2007 onwards, in the last few years, remittances have actually stagnated, right? So now I just want to ask this question to the panel as to what they think can be done from a policy perspective, from a government initiative perspective. What does the panel think? Let me now ask this question to Dr. Garg as to what his perspectives are in terms of boosting remittances. Dr. Garg.
Remittances are a very important part of the current account transactions which happen. The focus in all foreign exchange movement is to try and reduce the hurdles or reduce the blocks, whether it's for incoming in terms of businesses, in terms of providing greater number of vehicles that exist. For example, alternate investment funds, the kind of equity shares partially paid, etc., to increase the number of instruments available and reduce the costs, and whether it's for current account or capital account transactions. So that's the basic focus. Apart from that, banks offer various kinds of incentives like FCNR deposits, etc., which have their interest rates, which are on commercial considerations, which are based on what the banks think would be right. But the focus in terms of policy is more on ensuring that these what should I say, irritants in transmission that are reduced.
Could we have Dr. Anand Srivastava's perspective in terms of what the government or the regulator can do to boost up the remittances?
There are two actions which are currently on the regulatory side which are there, which will impact. One is the recent circular guidelines which the RBI has put up for allowing the prepaid payment instrument. My friend Naveen is there. He would, I think, he can throw more light on that, which will allow, which allows foreign exchange, dealing there. However, to leverage the business correspondent network, which is already existing across the length and breadth of India, the total number is 285,000. The white label BC guidelines, which are under formulation with the RBI, that and this particular guideline and the NPCI under the instructions from RBI, allowing interoperability of the BC agent, basically the Bank Mitra, will create the full infrastructure and the vehicle and connectivity to increase the flow of foreign remittances right up to the level and the ease of that.
Naveen, we'd like to hear from you.
So I think first, thanks to Dr. Garg and the government and the ministry, we have already seen huge event in November, which has already boosted whatever has to happen in digital, in all, including remittances. In fact, during this period, we as an industry have seen increased use. A lot of customers who are underbanked, they need to be paid physical cash. So while that time the cash was not available, that gave boost for alternatives like prepaid instruments to be looked at as a solution. All these people we give money, instead of giving physical cash, they ultimately spend. So can we give them into a wallet if they don't have a bank account? At least can we create a wallet? Can they start using it? I think the draft guidelines that we've seen in a prepaid is already talking about looking at that as an option and say, okay, up to 50,000 rupee transaction value, you can transfer into these wallet so that the payment and the transactions thereon can continue to be digital instead of giving cash. Similarly, interestingly, we've also seen first time there is a thought again mooted in the guidelines that for foreign outward current account transactions up to 5,000 rupees, can the instrument, which are at least either issued by an entity which has a AD license themselves, or the entities which are bank having AD licenses, can consider up to 5,000 rupee transaction. Of course, there is a room for discussions, and these are draft guidelines. Technically, all PPIs can participate because they have a escrow banker who has AD license. Theoretically, it's a compliance around money going out. So I'm sure some of those discussion will happen.
Let me ask this question to Dharmesh next. He has been handling remittances at Yes Bank. What is your perspective, Dharmesh?
I think India is one of the far more evolved countries in terms of remittances. In terms of cost also, cost of remitting back to India is much lower than the global average. Even in terms of turnaround time, India is far more evolved. However, there are few cases, and I would like to share a few South Asian countries have been incentivizing remittances more from a government perspective. So without taking names, there is a policy where one of the South Asian country actually gives a remittance card to a guy who is remitting money. Now this remittance card can be used, so it depends on the volume which you are remitting money back to India. So for example, if a guy is remitting $1 million back to India, he's getting a duty-free credit into his remittance card, which you can use when he's visiting that country, and which is an interesting concept. So you're not actually incentivizing or spending something, but you're foregoing some revenue out of it, and that country has actually seen a 10x jump in the last 6 years. So some of those interesting novel ideas we should now look at it, because now if you look at the volumes to India is plateauing at around $70 billion. It was around $37 billion in 2004, and the growth was phenomenal. Last 3 years it is close to 70. So I think some of these incentives are critical. Philippines, for example, one of the other countries, has also started educating a lot of their diaspora who are going overseas. So the idea is to, before they leave the country, they get a full day orientation, a skill development program, where they actually are aware of what is the importance of saving back into your country, because you never know, you may have to come back one fine day. So some of those interesting concepts which are driven centrally by the regulators, the central government, can actually help drive these numbers.
Dr. Rajendran, what is your perspective? You're also closely associated with remittances thanks to all these initiatives from the NPCI side. What is your take on the initiatives from the government side?
See, first I wanted to respond to his query about the BC interoperabilities. I do not know how many of you are aware that the BC interoperability already allowed and it is also exist, and we do lot of transaction, and we do settlements through the interbank transactions on BC, and the infrastructure level at the ground, it is day by day it is getting improved and increased in terms of the availability. So I think that will one of the mechanism, if we wanted to say remittance from outside to inward, it need to be reached to the right level and in time. So many products come with various things and so many things, and remittance to address all the levels, whether it is the people who have the access to the data networks, or people who have an access to an only voice network, and various mechanism already has been available. Now we see the things, there is need for improving the B2C transactions. That is what I'm just seeing the thing. Lot of the consumer has lot of access mechanism, but there is some lack of infrastructure issues on the B2C. We need to see how to improve that one.
Now we spoke about cost of remittances against the global average of 7.4%. South Asia is somewhere around 5.6. Now there is still room to bring the cost of remittances down, and at various G8 and G20 summits, this is being talked about. In the last G20 summit, I remember the Prime Minister of India talking about reducing the cost of remittances to a level of about 3%. I think, from that point of view, there is a huge role that technology can play in terms of bringing the cost of remittances down and at the same time increasing the speed of remittances, right? I would like to ask Abhijay as to what he thinks can be done from a technology perspective.
One is, of course, very increasingly with the infrastructure that the government is going to roll out right now. So one statistic that we have in India also is, while there is a remittance coming in at 2.5% odd or 2.85% odd, the onward distribution, 70% of that is still through informal channels. And that actually builds up the cost significantly. If you look at the use of technology now coming in through payment banks and through the PPI licenses, we see a lot more on the payment side getting much more streamlined and the costs coming down. In fact, that in a way will also increase the confidence, because everything will now move through a faster channel. So at a bank-to-bank level, you may have much more sophisticated stuff like blockchains, etc. But when you look at the B2C leg, I think the payment banks and the PPIs, which is now going to be coming in, the mobility, frankly, is going to be the cheapest form as far as technology is going to come in. And that technology is already in place. NPCI has set up many more channels, and increasingly we will see much more of a optionality being built into technology, where people will have the option to actually choose between one and the other and choose the cheapest form. So I think that kind of technology is coming in very significantly.
Back to you, Dr. Rajendran. When it comes to technology, I'm sure you will have plenty to add. What do you think can be done further in terms of new initiatives on the technology front to bring down the cost of remittances?
If you see the things, actually the delayed delivery of the cash to the final beneficiary adds the cost. That's what every calculation goes on. Why don't we have a system which have an integrated approach? Okay, what currently we are doing, one channel to receive from the abroad, and after that again creating another setup or way to create another delivery channel. It goes to through a domestic remittance way. So there are lot of improvements has been being done, but still what I see the things, and using the technology and the efficiency can be improved, not only just for delivering to the last mile, and also to whatever checks and balances need to be done before it need to be delivered to the final beneficiary. So, and if we are just gone through now government also have the big plan to have a digitization plan. We get into the things which are the segment where and need to be improved and everything. That's why ultimately now even I have a mobile to do it anything. So what I am just thinking the things, and the future approach, it could be based on the mobile is the one of the a viable option to reach and deliver the things. I can do anything with my mobile. I do payment, transfer, or receive money, whatever you wanted to do, I have mechanism to do it. So if we focus on the mobile as one of the things, and the authentication mechanism now it is identification, Aadhaar, and everything are come into the picture. And if we see the things, and the delivery can able to happen very faster and reliable, and ultimately the cost should come down.
Naveen, what's your perspective on the technology?
I think today, in last 3 years, if I'm not wrong, and we have just reached from zero to about close to $8 billion worth of domestic remittances, which were only being done in informal sector prior to this, or in some cases probably post office, where the cost was 5%. Today, the same thing, over a period of time, as the volume has increased, as the scale has increased, has come down to as low as 1 to 1.5%. And very soon, we will be able to deliver these domestic remittances transactions at probably 1% or lower than that. Now, this all has been achieved because of technology. And who's delivered that technology here? Of course, IMPS, which is a... So ultimately, you're talking to a customer who has experience early going to a post office or an informal channel, not sure when the money will be received, how many days will it take, versus whether he has a phone, whether he doesn't have a phone, whether he has a smartphone, either if he's technology saving, using technology, or going to either a BC outlet or a PPI agent, digitizing that money in a real-time, immediate basis, both recipient and the sender getting a real-time confirmation at that cost. It takes care of a trust because he's doing it at a point which is known to him. It is an outlet. It comes over the technology barriers depending on the customer's education, social profile, because a lot of these beneficiary and sender could be socially or education-wise a challenge issue, but they're also doing this. So if you see in terms of volume, I think it's about 20 million each PPI on an average doing, and there are BCs also doing. On a monthly basis, 40% transactions are being contributed by them. So I think if you see, this is all technology with the trust and making sure that the transaction is happening with a very high success rate. So actually, I should not ignore that. The success rate, if I'm not wrong, and Rajendran sir can correct me, it's over 99.98% in most cases. And actually, every month we get a report. Even if there is a 1 basis point or a more, there is a different categorization for every player. So very closely monitor. So this is all because of technology, and this is all because of participation. And we just need to make sure that this continues. How do we plug this with the international in a seamless manner, where the customer, which remittance he is receiving, whether from domestic or international doesn't matter, it is actually taken care at an NPCI level could be very useful. Similarly, how do we ensure that after receiving the money, how do we gradually enable these for a multiple type of payments in an interoperable scenario? Because we forget that ultimately remittance is like a lifeline, which you rightly mentioned. But this is for a purpose. They have to start using this money for some purpose. And how do we get that ecosystem also riding this, built in a digital way, could actually bring the cost down and still revenue up for the entire ecosystem?
I think the panel believes that there is so much that we can do on the government initiatives and policy, role of technology in terms of bringing the cost of remittances down and increasing the speed of remittances. And also, there is huge scope for digital remittances from an India perspective. I would like to thank all the panelists for some great insights. Thank you very much, and thank you, audience, for your participation.